I call Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to talk about one particular area in health, and that's the area of mental health, which is one that historically has been poorly dealt with by governments right around the world, including ours. And I guess perhaps it's because of our fear of mental illness, that we might be affected by it, that we have chosen instead to put people in the bin, to put them out of sight in those big psychiatric institutions. I'm thinking Kingseat, Seacliff, Seaview, Oakley, Carrington, successors of Bedlam, nasty places to be, Mr. Chair. But in the 80s and 90s in this country, we had two forces that were changing that. One was the process of deinstitutionalisation, and the other was several reports led by Judge Ken Mason. And the Mason reports led to a very substantial increase in funding for mental health services and led to the creation of the Mental Health Commission. And the Commission itself did an extraordinary amount of good work. It developed a blueprint for mental health services. It developed a ring fence for mental health funding to ensure that money that was intended for mental health services could not be spent elsewhere, and it ensured that there was ongoing oversight of the implementation of the blueprint for mental health services, so that under the watch of the Mental Health Commission, we saw steady improvement. We saw more services, we saw greater capacity, and we saw a pretty substantial increase in people's health. The Commission moved on to primary mental health with Blueprint 2, but now, Mr. Chair, things are going backwards. And they're going backwards because the ring fence doesn't really exist any longer. And so DHBs who are under substantial financial pressure are choosing instead to use dollars that were intended for mental health services for other services. Things are going backwards because there is no longer a top-line target for mental health services. And the point of targets is to increase focus and effort on those particular areas, with the consequence that those areas that are not targeted will have less focus, less resource, less effort, and sadly, Mr. Chair, mental health is one of those. And we've seen the Mental Health Commission disbanded and replaced with a single Mental Health Commissioner whose focus is on individual complaints and not the kind of systemic oversight and improvement that we actually need. The Ministry of Health recently conducted a review of Waikato District Health Board's mental health services after a series of tragic events at that DHB. They found that staff working in mental health had very low morale. They found that the Planning and Funding Department was paying a price below the national price for mental health services. That staffing ratios meant that clinical staff in mental health were having to try and care for more people than it was appropriate. And they found that vacancies in mental health staffing were being held open to enable the DHB to save money. And Mr. Chair, those shortcomings are echoed amongst other district health boards: Northland, Capital and Coast, Southern, Canterbury. Mr. Chair, they are the signs of a sector that is under severe financial pressure. Severe financial pressure that is stretching our mental health services not only to breaking point, but beyond breaking point. And people like Nikki Stevens have paid the price for that underfunding, for that eye off the ball with their lives. Mr. Chair, it is now time for an urgent, nationwide inquiry into the state of this country's mental health services.
Barbara Stewart.
Thank you very much.